I guess you just start with introducing yourself.
I'm Henry Ndandalika, Dr. Henry Ndandalika. It's the best introduction I can give, and since I'm here in my personal capacity, I don't think I should give any more.
What's moved you to talk about the coronavirus?
Moved, probably the right word. It's been just going around the world, all over. Everyone is affected. Very few people seem to know what we're supposed to do or how we're supposed to get around it. Nobody knows when it's going to end, and nobody seems to have the answers. That's the first thing. The second thing that is of concern is that, well, I'm fortunate to live in Zambia, so then that means that if anything goes really, really bad, we are lying there vulnerable, let's call it that, and it could actually be the worst case scenario in our case, because our capacity to deal with it might be limited. So that's my major concern.
Okay, so what is the coronavirus?
Okay, so with that one, I'd rather go with what everybody else has said, which would be basically it's a virus, a respiratory virus. The simple way to put it would be the disease that makes your lungs fail to work and then you die. That's if you actually don't get proper attention and treatment. You could get better, but yeah. If you want to look at it from a technical perspective, though, it's one of the SARS viruses, and that's what the scientific community is saying. It's related to the virus that we heard about in 2010, which we fortunately didn't spread so widely. It causes respiratory signs. It makes you breathe badly, it makes you cough, makes your throat irritate, it makes your eyes itch, and that's basically what is there.
The two terms going on describing the virus right now, Covid19 and coronavirus itself.
Okay, so coronavirus and COVID-19. All right, the COVID-19 and coronavirus, both of which are new terms really. Coronavirus isn't, it's from a long time ago. There's many types of coronaviruses. I happen to be a vet, so I'm privileged because then each animal you can point out, almost any of them on the world have got their own type of coronavirus. So the coronavirus is not a new virus. However, SARS-CoV-2 is the new one. That's the one which they're calling the novel coronavirus. It causes a disease that you then now refer to as then COVID-19.
Okay, you said some of the symptoms, but what are the symptoms of coronavirus?
So the usual, fever, difficulties in breathing, itchy throat, itchy eyes, and a cough rather than a sneeze. So no sneezing as far as people can tell. Lately there's a lot of rumors going around, so then it's a bit hard to tell which is the reality of the whole coronavirus situation. But there is a claim that most people who get coronavirus also do get diarrhea, and that might be something to look into in a way. Perhaps that should be included on the list of signs. But mainly fever has always been consistent. Breathing problems has been consistent, and with a cough, itching eyes, itching throat. Those have been something that almost everyone can agree that those are the critical signs that one should observe for in coronavirus.
You mentioned that the coronavirus has affected different types of animals. So, can coronavirus be transmitted to our pets?
All right, so I should correct that in a way. Coronavirus of different types of animals exists. All right, so dogs have their own coronavirus. Cats have their own coronavirus. Chickens have their own coronavirus. It's like a family of a disease. So the viruses are related. They are the group of coronaviruses. So they have their own. So for instance, the coronavirus that is with the humans has been researched over a period of time and doesn't affect chickens. So the chickens won't get the COVID-19 disease caused by the SARS-CoV-2, but they'll get the infectious bronchitis, which is a coronavirus. So the coronavirus for chickens is called avian infectious bronchitis, but it won't affect people. The avian infectious bronchitis will not affect humans, and the SARS-CoV-2 will not affect the chickens, but they're both coronaviruses.
So, when it comes to animals, are there any measures that can be taken to protect them from their specific type of corona?
Yes, there's vaccines for those already. There are most of them, at least. These are diseases that have existed over a long time, and each of them presents in each different animal type. It presents a different way, and there's vaccines for those ones. But that's a long-term one. But as usual, that was not something that people worried about because it didn't kill many people. It just killed animals, so it was okay to slaughter them and let them go.
Okay, so since we're basically under threat from coronavirus as humans, how can we protect ourselves from the virus?
Okay, that's the tricky one. Now, so there is the measures that have been prescribed by the scientists all over the world. And frankly, this is one of the things I would like to talk about. At least in the world, there's thousands and scientists in their millions. Now, scientists are mean human doctors, vet doctors as it is, including myself. Then we have pharmacists, we have got public health specialists, and all those big people all over the world. And it's just unfortunate that with the progress of things, it seems like people have lost their way of analyzing things and looking at science as it should be looked at. The whole world has come up with one strategy to address coronavirus. They will tell you, well, wash your hands, social distancing, stay home, which all of these measures are related to reducing transmission between an infected person and a person who is not infected. Now, like you probably know, one of the things that everyone seems to point out is that the coronavirus is a new virus. Now, within the past few months, not even a year, they have got their valuable information and compounded it into the best possible solution. Now, this is based on Wuhan, China, Italy, the States, and everything else, and put together. But then, if you look at the measures that have been done, are they working? Everyone keeps saying flatten the curve. That's the buzzword for coronavirus. Let's stay at home, limit transmission between one person and the next. Then the curve will flatten out. Let's take the Zambian scenario, for instance. We have had up to a little over 100 cases. Out of those, the ones that have been confirmed positive are about 39. Out of the 39 who have been confirmed positive, only 3 have died. So now, let's say someone is positive in Kafue, let's say another person is positive in Lusaka town, mid-central town. The disadvantage with what the virus seems to be showing us is that the one person who has died, or the 39 people who have been affected, don't seem to have a trail behind them of people who were also affected. So then the question that bothers me at the moment is, what are we missing? Because it seems the measures that have been put in place are meant to control the virus. Now, if you look at places like Tanzania didn't lock down. Tanzania didn't close churches. Tanzania has a population larger than South Africa. South Africa is supposed to be more technologically advanced. South Africa locked down. South Africa has a population less than Tanzania, as pointed out earlier, but the number of cases in South Africa are up to 5,000. The number of cases in Tanzania are only 800. Say they're not testing. That's what everyone keeps saying. In Zambia, we are not testing. That's why we are not seeing the cases. And maybe Africa is not testing. Maybe that is true. But if we were not testing, the number of people that have died of coronavirus up to date should have increased. Now, let's say we don't know that those people are really dying of coronavirus or something else. The number of cases of people who were failing to breathe, coughing and everything should have increased. They haven't. The general number of people who are supposed to die haven't died. If we look at the idea of wearing masks, washing hands, and the assumption that the old and the young are the ones who are more susceptible to coronavirus, you will realize that generally, I haven't heard at least of a large population of children that are sick in a ward specifically for children, because it would have made international news to say up to 500 children less than 9 years of age are admitted for coronavirus. The children are the ones who are less likely to adhere to not touching their face. They're the ones who are less likely to wear masks. They're the ones who are supposed to be more affected. So now there is something that is called a very authentic scientific analogy in epidemiology, and it's used for infectious diseases. It's called an epidemiological triad. You have probably heard the words pandemic being referred to. So the study of infectious diseases, their spread, and the environment and the things they spread to is the epidemiology. Now, epidemiological triad is like a triangle. So you have visualize a triangle, and you have the virus, the coronavirus at the top, and then on each side of the bases of the triangle you have two things, the environment and the host. The host is the animal that gets infected. The environment is the places where that animal goes and interacts with. In the case of humans, we will have related to their cultured behavior, and everything is, do they touch their face, do they shake hands when greeting, do they walk around places? That all can in a way encompass the environment. Our current measures for coronavirus have been targeted at two things: the pathogen, the agent, then we have the environment, which is the disinfection. So we have the pathogen, which is trying to keep it from spreading and trying to murder it, trying to understand how it works and all those things, and then how to control it in its environment. That reduces survival. That's when it is on the table here, we get a disinfectant. When it's in the hands, we wash up and everything, so that then our culture and our ways of acting can maybe not lead us to get disease as much as we should. What we have left out, and what I think is the big problem, is the host, the person. What are the variables of the person that are causing these disparities between the Zambian, Tanzanian, and South African situation, looking at Africa only? What is it that is making South Africa have so many cases when they locked down, and Tanzania, that had barely did anything close to lockdown, have had much fewer cases? They have a larger population. So is it the measures that are really protecting us? So the question, what can I do to protect myself? Should we review that? Why are the children not getting infected? Why is it that the people who are infected in the family, it turns out that one person is infected? Let's take about the first cases that were reported in Zambia. They were family, 2 children, 2 adults. The male was showing symptoms. The wife or female was not showing symptoms but was positive. The 2 children were implied to be negative. But they were around them. They obviously touched their parents. They probably were coughed onto, yes, but they didn't get the infection according to the report we were given. The female didn't get sick, the children didn't get sick. So what is it there that we've missed? What is it that made those children not get sick? What is it that made that woman not get sick? There's some people who test positive and are positive over a period of time and do not show signs. Now, is the person that is positive always going to transmit to the next person? Are there some people who will get the virus and transmit it without them getting sick? Are there some people who will get the virus and not get sick and not transmit it? Is there a unique way in which we are susceptible that we haven't reviewed as scientists? Science has to re-look at all this and decide how to approach it from a completely different way. We can't all agree, the whole world cannot agree on a few steps that the World Health Organization or whoever the big bodies of concern and consensus are supposed to decide, or this is what you should all do. What if they're wrong? What if there's a better solution somewhere? So someone needs to ask the questions. The current explanations we have been receiving do not fit, because at our rate, we should have had people dying like flies in Zambia from what we heard happening in Wuhan. We should have had a big problem, and we don't have it. So then, our skill, how do we protect ourselves? And I think the idea that people want to rush out and say, this is what you must do, might be one of the reasons that is stopping us of thinking of other options. We should be in a position where we can admit to what we know and what we do not know. For those that can remember, last year, 2019, there was a very bad flu that went around in Zambia. A lot of people caught it. There was a lot of coughing involved. It was just an outbreak spreading. Nobody knew. We don't test for flu in Zambia. You have a flu, you go for work, everyone gets it, and yeah, you get me flu, you high five, and you get on with it. We're not in a country where we test for flu viruses, and we can say we never had corona before. Well, possibly we never had it, but what if we picked up something similar that made us immune? What if we didn't? So research has to look broadly into the possibilities of the things that we haven't considered. That might be our solution, because the things we have considered are not consistent with the three countries I've referred to. If we were right, then the picture should fit. So I'm not saying do not social distance, I'm not saying do not wear masks, I'm just saying that there should be more.
Okay, is there a cure for coronavirus?
The straight answer is no. So unless someone comes up with something new, but generally there is no cure for viruses. Here's the tricky thing about viruses. I will talk about this with particular reference to corona. Viruses are not necessarily, in my opinion, based on how I understand the science that I've been taught, viruses are not living things. Viruses are particles of DNA or RNA. One of the properties of living things is reproduction. Viruses on their own cannot reproduce. One virus left on this table will remain as one virus until it finds a host. So that's a bit of a push, but at the end of the day, the virus on its own doesn't breathe, doesn't grow, doesn't replicate. It's just particles of DNA that phase from one phase to another, and when they happen to enter a host, they use the host cell to multiply. Now, my point in all that, as far as cures are concerned, is that one of the things that we're doing when we are told to do what we're doing, for instance, to wash your hands with soap, is the virus has got an envelope around it, which is made of a fat layer. And when you use a detergent that breaks down fat, a lipolytic detergent, you are more likely to perforate on the virus and cause it to more likely not be able to replicate, which in essence is not exactly dying. It's not like you've cured it. But for layman purposes, yes, we've cured the virus. Now, when we take most of the antiretrovirals for HIV or any other treatments for viruses, the virus itself is within the cell of the housing organism, the person in this case. Whether it's in chickens or anything else, it's exactly the same. There is no medicine that can kill the virus without killing the host cell yet. Because the moment the virus enters your body, it becomes part of your body and uses your cell to make more of itself. So in a way, you can't kill it without killing yourself, almost. That's why ARVs reduce the count, but do not stop it. So is there a cure? No. However, here's the catch of other viruses. The way we should look at it, and the reason I went on and on about the host and why we should focus on that, is that the most important thing in viral diseases is host immunity. In HIV, we know about the CD4 count, which is supposed to be high. If the CD4 count is high, the person doesn't show symptoms. The moment it drops, symptoms show up. So it's not so much as you have got a virus, you're going to get sick and you're going to die. That triangle I talked about plays all the roles. You can get the right virus in the wrong environment and it doesn't cause the disease. You can get the right virus in the right animal, like a person, but then the person's immunity is so well equipped that the virus doesn't even start to multiply. So what our best chance is for the virus, and the reason why we should re-look into the individual and see how they can fight the virus without any help from a hospital or clinic, is because the most reliable system of protection against viruses is our own very own immune system, which we are born with, which we live with every day. If we can find a way to improve our immunity, which is why the story of vaccines has come up. Let's reevaluate the lockdown. You have kept people away from each other 1 meter apart, so like standing 1 meter apart, and then you have reduced the infection. So I have COVID-19, you don't have, all right? You are still not yet immune to it, so the moment I cough in your directions, you're going to get it. So you're going to get sick tomorrow. So what happens then? So then the only way now to break that social distancing and lockdown is if there is a way of ensuring that you don't get it when I cough, even when I have it. Now, there are two ways to make sure of that. To make sure that there are people who have a natural existing immunity which will fight the coronavirus, if they're there, which I don't think we have explored that quite significantly. The alternative is then to also consider the possibility that of vaccinating, which a lot of people are against. The idea of a vaccine being made quickly and distributed to countries and tried in Africa, which was suggested, and a lot of people had a lot of outcry. There is something that they have overlooked so far. Remember, there's the part where I explained earlier, where the people who have the disease, the virus, but don't have the disease. That's the people we need to look into. Why don't they have the disease? And maybe, just maybe, in Zambia, particular reference, as compared to Tanzania and South Africa, as referred to earlier, these people may offer us the clue as to why the disease is not spreading as fast, even without the measures that were asked of us. Now we have reopened churches. Of course, it's optional, but there is now it's been how long since the churches were open? Almost a week. And there is no boom in sickness and illnesses, because naturally then it should have been there. Soweto market in Zambia has been open the whole time. People are not keeping 1 meter apart distance there. But where are the infections that are coming out of that? The buses are still carrying 16 people. And the money that we pay in buses is still being exchanged. There isn't a huge number of people dying. 3 people is a lot for those people who lost their relatives. I know for them it's not a small loss, but let's look at proportions compared to other countries, it's not. I hope after this COVID-19 we don't get back to what we used to be. I hope it changes people in many different ways. I hope we go back to a new place where we are completely different people and we look at things completely differently and realize that we need to be more proactive. We need to look out for problems before they start. We need to be more concerned about our health and immunity. But for now, we need to assess if it is safe for the people to go back out. So there is a suggestion that I have, which is probably the grand suggestion. So if there's another questions, I'll take those first before I do the grand suggestion.
Since there's no cure, is it possible for somebody that has a virus to recover and get better?
That goes to the grand suggestion, I suppose. Is that the last question?
Yes.
All right. So, the grand suggestion plus that, is it possible for a person who has the virus to get better what is a recovery? Because when you say the person doesn't test positive to a respiratory virus, it does not mean the respiratory virus has left the person. Two different things. Because when a virus goes into the respiratory system, especially with respiratory problems that cause breathing problems, blockages of the airways, in this particular case, maybe it spreads throughout the system, there will always be viral residues in their system. Either, option A, the immune system by then would have been woken up to a point that it has actually caused the virus to be suppressed permanently, the immune system, or the person themselves will keep carrying the virus until the immune system is suppressed so that then they can release it again. It's like, I'm sure you have heard of people who at some point don't test positive for HIV as well, and then they come back to being positive. Because when the viral load goes low enough that the test cannot detect it, then you test negative. The idea, as it is at the moment, is that people will eventually get infected. A vaccine will be a trial vaccine for another 2 years or 3 years. There are vaccines that have been used for 4 years before you actually realize they actually weren't working at all, or they were not providing enough immunity to make a vaccine within a year for a virus, which is what the world would need, less than a year or less than 2 years to make a functional vaccine so that they can lift the lockdown, is almost impossible. However, the moment they perfect a way that can keep the affected and infected ones alive, the suggested one, and the grand suggestion is this, and this might work. It might be what is working already. You see, the original vaccine that was formed against, I think, measles, and the vaccine for chickenpox, because humans get chickenpox, was if you have a child at your home and there is a child on the neighbor's home who is sick, you carry that child and expose them to the one who has chickenpox on the other child, and when you get it, you never get it again. So you become sick terribly for at least 1 week or 2 weeks, depending upon how bad your immunity is. But once you recover, you never get sick again. That's how the vaccine was done originally. There was no going to the lab, making something that will be injected into you, which is meant to be the safer option. Do we have time for the safer option? Or is our environment and the host already telling us that we have a solution within ourselves already? Or is it just fear that's governing us? Because coronavirus has been marketed with a lot of fear. Marketed because I believe there's a lot of franchise going on with coronavirus, a lot of things that are selling and all that. Yes, the economies are going down, but not everyone is complaining. The point is, there might be a way of introducing the virus safely to people. If you could have a way of exposing people knowingly to the virus, a group at a time, and monitoring them for a certain period of time, that might be the best way to do it. Unless the host is immune, we don't get anywhere. A vaccine, yes, it's the safe way, but when are we going to have it? Will we trust it when we have it? Will people happily accept to be given the vaccine with all this social media confusion going on around the concept of vaccination? Will we then create a more immune population? Now, this is not necessarily a light bulb moment, not really. As vets, we do that all the time. When we have a group of cattle that is infected, we do the analogy of how the disease is spreading, which animals are affected. We don't get the privilege of asking our patients that, and our patients are not compliant. So if we taught animals to social distance in order for them not to contract the virus, they won't do it. So the way we attend to the viruses are two ways. One is test new viruses, test the animals that are positive, slaughter all of them. We can't do that for human beings. Option two, assess the damage that it will cause if you let it spread. So if the damage that will cause if you let it spread, based on the rate that we have now, the references to our own cases, where we have 39 positive and 3 have died. And the 3 are extremely circumstantial cases, one of which is a suicide. The amount of pathogens that an average Zambian is exposed to in the very close contact they have, this would be Africa and India, this is the general story, and the rural parts of China, if you want to refer to that. People live in so close contacts and are exposed to so much poor pathogens. Their compounds which don't have running water, their toilet and their pit latrine are 10 meters apart. They're literally drinking soiled water every day. A yard is housing 50 people and they have 1 pit latrine, 1 tap. It's that kind of living tends to expose you to too many infections, and the immune system stays on high alert, and it might actually give you an advantage to things like a new virus that breaks out. But we need to look at these things and know if they give us an advantage, so that we may know that we don't need to panic as much as the world that lives in a clean, nice environment, that has disinfectants at the entrance of every other place, that has paved yards everywhere, that has no street vendors, and the food that they eat is clean and certified by public health and everything. Can we achieve these control measures that we are hoping to achieve? Can we reduce the amount of effect of COVID-19 in Zambia, for instance, and in Africa, without having to use so much resources? Is there another way? If there is, can we be bold enough to actually at least look into it and make plans to exploit this method that could be perhaps our salvation? And that's my grand message. Within it, you will find many references to things, and just take your time and think about it, and you might realize that there might be an easier way, there might be a cheaper way, there might be a more effective way.